Chair. Thank you, Harriet Shing, Member of the Legislative Council and Minister for Housing and Building Development, Victorian Precincts and the Suburban Rail Loop.
Thank you. Now, I understand we've got about 5 minutes for a presentation, then we'll go to questions. So welcome, Minister, and hand it over to you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's good to join you all here today. We're on Wurundjeri country, so I want to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands upon which we gather, and I also acknowledge their important role in the ongoing discussions in the work of Homes Victoria, not just as it relates to the Towers redevelopment, but to the delivery of social and affordable housing and the work that goes on to address intergenerational disadvantage, poverty and lack of opportunity. So it's a privilege to be here today to talk you through the work that we are doing as part of the redevelopment of the ageing high-rise towers across Melbourne. You've heard from numerous witnesses about the history and the profile of this redevelopment program, and given that time is short, I'm not planning on duplicating that chronology. But what I do want to say very clearly is that the Andrews and now Allen government believes very strongly that every Victorian deserves access to a safe, stable and affordable home, and that in recognition of this belief and in response to more and more Victorians struggling to access housing, we've released the housing statement, which, as you know, referred to the importance of making sure that we could develop further housing over the following decade, and that the 44 ageing high-rise towers were no longer meeting the needs of residents. You've heard ample evidence of that from a range of different perspectives in the course of this inquiry. To reiterate, however, and I would invite you to turn your minds to what you have seen yourselves at the high-rise towers. They are ageing. They have exceeded the lifetime for which they were originally developed. You're well aware of the precast concrete slab construction. You're also aware of what is happening globally around the redevelopment of housing towers with similar configurations. We know that key systems, as you have heard, like plumbing, like sewage, are breaking down, and that disability access and fire safety standards are not being met. Irrespective of your view on the towers, the facts of their decline are clear. And it's also important to note that $110 million per annum on capital and operational maintenance is something that we are investing not because it's a luxury, but because it's a necessity, to make sure that in acquitting our responsibility to safe and stable and affordable housing, we're doing so in a way that makes the very best use of the funding that we have as part of the maintenance budgets. But this is swimming against a very strong current of deterioration. As you've heard, the concrete slabs themselves were built for a 50-year lifespan. And this program of redevelopment is a multi-decade process, because we know that if we don't act now, then we won't have plans in place to replace these towers with the homes that are bright and beautiful and modern and energy efficient, homes that people in our social housing system deserve as part of tenure-blind development and as part of making the best possible use of the land that we have available, including in environments and neighbourhoods that are connected to areas where people have grown up, have raised their kids, have celebrated significant milestones and mourned the loss of family members. We want to make sure that we're honouring these communities. We want to make sure that the housing that we are providing for people is not degraded to the point where we have to act with undue haste in a way that doesn't give people choices because we left it for too long. You've seen yourselves what happens with copper piping, with concrete in high traffic areas as it degrades. You've seen yourselves the work that we can do and the work that we are doing to develop and to deliver new housing for people, housing for vulnerable people, housing using a range of models to deliver as much housing as possible in locations where people can remain connected to the things that they hold dear. And giving people options and choices is an intrinsically important part of this process. But I also want to make very, very clear, I'm under no illusions, and the government is under no illusions about the fact that this is difficult, that change is a really challenging and often distressing thing for people who have called the towers home, often for their entire lives. We're working so carefully with people to assist them in understanding the options that they have available, in ongoing conversation in a way that is accessible. We want people to have a sense of empowerment and autonomy that often, because of vulnerabilities or trauma that they've experienced in the course of their lives, they have not had, to the extent that they deserve and to the extent that we are providing.
To Dr. Heath.
Thank you so much, Minister, for coming and presenting here today. Why did your department spend over $3 million in the Supreme Court to keep the business case for the housing towers secret?
Okay, so there's been legal proceedings. There are also legal proceedings that remain underway. So again, just by way of caveat, I'm not going to be making any comment in relation to legal proceedings that are on foot. There are questions of law that are yet to be determined. Homes Victoria has taken the action that it has in relation to a defence of its position and the work that government is undertaking as part of redevelopment. And as you would know from the decisions and the judgments that have been issued already, there were claims of privilege that were sought and that were granted in respect of certain classes of document.
Think 44 public housing towers are best served by the total demolition, as opposed to the evidence given today by the engineer that designed and built the foundations and the expert architectural witnesses, and there were quite a number of them today, that a modern refit and refurb would and should be done, as it's better for the environment and it's better financially. Why have you only made 12 of the 158 documents relating to the details of these public?
Again, this is something which has been discussed at length, both here in this committee and also in the Parliament. The Attorney has issued a response to the request for documents indicating that 12 of the total request for documents be released and that the remainder be, not provided on the basis of privilege, and that's what has been determined, and privilege operates for a good reason, and that was something that was explored at length by the judge in question, who had made a determination that the privilege was, as exercised, justified.
What are you hiding, Minister?
Again, it's an interesting question there, because again, no matter how many times you ask, I'm not going to stray from the fact that privilege has been exercised and that the exercise of that privilege has been withheld by the courts.
Do you accept that there's a huge amount of frustration? I'm sure you've been watching the proceedings, that there's so little transparency on what's being done with public land, public housing towers and public money?
We've been very clear about the public money. We've been very clear about the public land and the work that is happening there. We've been very clear about engaging with residents. We've been very clear about the rationale for this work. And so this work goes on. Dr. Heath, it is about making sure that as the redevelopment program continues, we're doing it in a way that provides people with the best measure of agency that we can provide in the course of increasing the density across these sites, and also in the course of engaging with people about a relocations process, a right of return, and about ongoing engagement to access services and supports.
Thank you. Why wasn't the contract for Flemington and North Melbourne Towers made public?
The contract for Flemington and North Melbourne. So again, contracts are commercial in confidence. The way in which we report on items as allocated within the budget is in the budget, and again it's about $836 million allocated thus far, and we'll continue to deliver on that work because that's our priority.
Chair, thank you, Minister, for joining us today. Minister, is the government deliberately failing to maintain these towers?
No.
To construct a rationale for...
No, and I've got to say, it's deeply irresponsible to make a claim that assets are being sweated when they're not assets. And again, I heard a reference earlier to these towers being described as the largest asset that Victoria has, to paraphrase you, Mrs. Hermans. They're homes. We're talking about places that people call home. home. And that's where, again, the investment that we make in maintenance is to make sure that at the very least, as we swim against this current of deterioration, we're doing so in a way that enables us to check and to stabilise and to repair and to improve and, in a range of examples, to retrofit.
But Chair, Minister, I want to go back to the 146 documents withheld from the Parliament under executive privilege. Under Legislative Council Standing Order 10.03, even when executive privilege is claimed, the documents must still be provided to the clerk and the member who moved the motion. I can confirm that neither have received them. Why did your government ignore the standing orders?
Again, the attorney's written to the Parliament. That letter has been tabled alongside documents that were provided in part in response to that request for documentation. And that's the attorney's position, that's the government's position, and I'll leave it there.
Will you now provide these documents to the clerk and the motion mover as you're required to under the standing orders?
Again, the attorney has addressed that matter, including by way of release of 12 of those documents.
And when will that happen?
The documents being released, she said, on the 12th.
Oh, sorry, yes. How can the public believe the government minister has made the best economical decision with taxpayer money and public land if the government only released 12 of the 158 documents it has detailing this plan?
The best use of taxpayer money, Ms. Gray-Barberio, relates to meeting our obligations to provide people with safe, secure and dignified housing.
Minister, would you agree that involves transparency?
I might just continue my answer if I may.
Oh no, I'd like for you just to answer that side question, which is really important, Minister, here
Yeah,
for the committee and for the Victorian public. Is transparency a paramount value when it comes to taxpayer money and public land? The Victorian public deserves to know from their government transparency and accountability. Is that part of the decision making?
Let me be as transparent and as clear as I can possibly be. The 44 towers have exceeded their operational life.
Where's the documents
towers
were
built with a
substantiate that,
lifespan
Minister?
of 50 years. At the time that they were built, it was made abundantly clear. They were built with a lifespan of 50 to 70 years. That time is now. What I would suggest to you, Ms. Gray-Barberio, is that responsibility of government is to make decisions that contemplate changing needs of communities and that also contemplate risk, that contemplate amenity, that contemplate the way in which we are supporting vulnerable people. And it is hardly fair to suggest that failing to provide people with housing that meets their needs, their aspirations, and the base level of amenity being enjoyed by other people as part of our housing investment is not
part of your government's responsibility and good governance that involves accountability and transparency. Now, the committee, we've just heard from Homes Victoria, who, similar to what you're saying to us now, are not producing documents. This is in the public interest. Thousands of lives are being impacted by your government's decision. And as part of responsibility and good governance, that involves transparency and accountability. So will you be clear with the committee today whether your government will make every effort possible to produce these documents under Standing Order 10.03?
Ms. Gray-Barberio, I'll say it again. The court has been clear that the exercise of executive privilege is legitimate and is reasonable. 12 documents have been produced by the attorney. One of the things that I would say, however, is that mis and disinformation about the way in which these towers redevelopments are occurring is doing far more damage.
I'm going to ask you
Ms. Gray-Barberio,
to resist the temptation to go down that road. Okay, the question
exercised by you and your colleagues,
Minister, the question has been very clear to you.
I've answered it.
Will you follow the standing orders and provide the documents to the motion mover and the clerks? That's part of the standing orders.
I've addressed the answer to that 3 times now.
And we have to...
Thank you, and thank you, Minister. Actually, it's very interesting because everything's been very clear. But for us here on the panel, and they were your exact words, in terms of public housing, public land and the public money and the way this is all being done in terms of these towns, it's all been very clear. But we wouldn't be in this inquiry if it was very clear. So I have a number of questions for you. One was, I do want to take up the fact that you mentioned, you admitted that the towers are in a state of deterioration. Now, I understand with age, yes, buildings can deteriorate, but that's when they're not properly maintained. So to what level of responsibility will you, as the Minister of the departments involved in this, accept that some of that deterioration is as a result of a lack of maintenance?
Mrs. Hermans,
It's just a simple question. To what extent is the question? I don't need a big elaborate response on something that's totally different.
as Mr. McCurry went into in his evidence before, which I think you disagreed with pretty stridently, we are doing around $110 million in maintenance works, capital and operational, every year.
Yep.
No matter how much money we put, Mrs. Hermans, into the maintenance budget, it will not change the steady incursion of chlorate into precast concrete construction panels in high traffic areas, which are deteriorating and can be seen to deteriorate increasingly with every year that passes.
Okay, so with all due respect, we have heard from architects and the people who were involved in the foundations of some of these towers, and they have made it very clear that it is a simple fix. It's not a difficult fix, it can be done. People that work in the industry are able to do it. So then that's why we have a number of questions about the lack of information coming from the government. I want to move on to something else. You guys have been in government for 12 years. You're in charge of your budget.
I'll pick you up on that. I'll pick you up on that. And this is where, again, the $6.3 billion big housing build and regional housing fund are a record investment. What we have done in the last term of the Labor federal government, which continues now, is to get that access to support, including through the Social Housing Accelerator program, which itself is supporting the development of the red brick towers. Now, Peter Dutton actually said he was going to scrap the Housing Australia Future Fund. That's a $10 billion fund.
It has absolutely nothing to do with this.
Well, you just asked about why
you guys have been in government for 12 years. You need to take responsibility. Now, in evidence given today...
We'll pause there. What's your point of order, Mr. Galea?
Can the Minister please be asked questions without being yelled at?
Minister is going to respond to the questions that Mrs. Hermans is going to put to her. You've got 16 seconds, Mrs. Hermans.
In evidence given today, based on the information publicly available, the Elgin Street and Nicholson Street redevelopment will provide only an extra 35 beds. Because you are demolishing instead of refitting, these 35 extra beds will come at a cost of nearly $2 million each. And on top of that, you are still going to, with new developments, have maintenance costs. Minister, is this good value for money? For
retrofit would reduce the total number of homes. It would not be practicable. Everyone would need to relocate, and it's not fair on residents. Simply to bring housing up to a habitable standard costing $2.3 billion over 20 years, that's hardly a good deal for taxpayers or for residents, Mrs. Hermans.
Your ministerial diaries, Minister, it's evident that you've met with real estate, with investors, with super fund private developers in developing the plan before us, with super housing partnerships and Assemble, who understand it are merged alongside Homes Victoria's Towers Transactions Director. There have been multiple meetings, I understand, with these people who have private developer, commercial interest in the towers. Can you confirm for the committee whether any access, investment opportunities or roles were discussed in these meetings?
In these meetings with
the parties that I've just named.
Oh, sorry, the parties, I beg your pardon. I don't ever traverse issues that are the subject of procurement processes, tenders or expressions of interest. I am rigid to the point of stubborn infuriation on the point of who I will discuss what with. Any matters that are the subject of procurement processes, are the subject of tenders, RFPs or contractual engagement are absolutely ruled out of bounds whenever I have any meetings with any party that either is directly or may be directly or indirectly involved in those transactions.
Minister, are you prepared to release the minutes from these meetings to the committee?
I'm not sure there would be minutes.
Are you able to look for that on notice and provide them if available?
I'm not in the habit of keeping minutes from meetings that I have in the same way that I don't keep minutes for meetings with renter consultative committees. I don't keep minutes from meetings with the Valuer General. I don't keep minutes from discussions with members of Development Victoria or DTP. So again, I'm happy to talk you through the general conversations that I have. I'm not happy to go into detail of any confidential matters, but again, I would hope that the statement that I've just given you provides you with a measure of comfort. I take matters of integrity incredibly seriously, Mr. Puglielli, so I'm giving you that assurance here in this committee, with all of the seriousness that this committee and its processes involve, to confirm that I do not discuss, as a matter of course, any matters that are the subject of any discussions over which I might actually or in perception have any influence.
Just as I end my time, to make sure I've understood you correctly, no minutes were kept of these meetings?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Thank you.
You spoke about agency for residents at the beginning. Don't you think it would be good for that agency to understand the rationale and the evidence supporting them having to be relocated to another place? In particular, I'm talking about the cost-benefit analysis, which you say justifies their relocation. Do you think they deserve to know that?
I don't think it's, Chair, just a question of a cost-benefit analysis.
That is certainly a big factor that feeds into the decision to relocate and basically demolish.
I would say that the predominant reason for and rationale for the tower's redevelopment is their very condition and the typology of their construction. And as you've heard in other evidence, globally, retrofit is not being considered and demolition and deconstruction is occurring simply because of the fact that the structural components of buildings like these don't actually make for a reasonable case for retrofit. What I would say though, Chair, is that the thing that is driving us is the quality of housing, and the availability of housing will be determined by the pace at which we can deliver it, and also the work that we do around engagement, around consultation and discussion on the sorts of things that people want, the way in which they can
respect. My ask was about giving agency to those that live there, because they deserve an understanding about the justification about why they're being asked to move out, sometimes for up to 10 years, so that these towers can be demolished and redeveloped. Do you think they deserve to know?
Well, it's between 6 and 8 years, as I think you may have heard from the CEO of Homes Victoria, and that's actually set out in the materials that have been provided. There are many materials that are provided. I think they were attached to the Homes Victoria submission to this inquiry, and of course there is a lot of work that happens, including with interpreter engagement, with community discussion. Housing support officers work with people every single day to provide them with information, and again, this is part of the work we do all around the state. The scale of it is different, but the work to make sure that people understand that their housing may no longer be or may soon no longer be fit for purpose is an ongoing conversation.
I can certainly appreciate that, and you've said that evidence is well understood. I've got to say it's probably not well understood by this committee because we haven't received evidence to that effect. Now, you've talked about structural engineers' reports and those sort of things. We haven't received those. Would you be able to...
You held the concrete in your hands that crumbled, Chair.
If you took me up to a brand new car and said, geez, that's a great car, I'd say, yeah, okay. Mate, I'm not an expert on that sort of thing. I'm looking for a report from you that you can provide to the committee that justifies the decision. Can you provide that?
Have you seen the sewer stacks, Chair?
I'm asking you, can you provide a report?
Have you stood in a tower and listened?
Minister, I'm asking you if you can provide a report.
Have you been in a tower in the middle of winter or in the height of summer? Have you tried looking for a cool
Minister,
place?
I'm the one asking the questions here, please.
Well, again, I'm going to answer the questions with the sort of lived experience that people are telling us. And again, you just heard from Mr. Kretzer about the way in which transfer applications are higher across the towers, and they're highest when we're talking about towers that are in the first tranche.
Minister,
we're talking about 68% of transfer applications towers.
Point of order. Yes, Ms. Grey-Barbario.
Minister, I think the Chair has been very clear in this question. I would ask you to stop meandering and just answer the question.
You've got to go through me, I think.
I'm not sure that's a point of order, but anyway.
Look, I'll ask the question again. I'll restart the clock. We provide structural engineering reports that justify the decision to demolish the towers.
Again, there have been a number of documents that have been released, and again, Mr. McCracken, as you've heard from witnesses earlier in the hearings, there is work that is undertaken all the time around assessment of the suitability of those buildings.
Minister, we don't have that
continue to do that
evidence.
work.
You talk about going through the building, but I'm looking for an engineer's report that justifies your government's decision, which is what we're seeking, to understand the justification of the decision that you made as a minister to demolish the towers.
What I would invite you to do, Chair, is perhaps go back and very carefully look at the evidence that Mr. McCurry gave earlier this afternoon. He is an expert. He's provided you with
Minister,
context
I'm
of the
not asking
technical
for Mr.
detail.
McCurry's evidence. I'm asking for a report from you.
No.
I'm asking you to provide a
Again,
report.
materials have been released, as you've seen. They've been provided publicly. And again, we rely upon those materials. And I also just want to be really clear. The claim of privilege in relation to matters the subject of Cabinet confidence, Cabinet discussions and Cabinet deliberations has been upheld by the court. I don't think that anyone is suggesting that the towers are not requiring of development. It's about what that looks like and about how that looks. And this is where, as government, we've taken a decision.
Thank you, Minister.
By reference to a range of considerations that the towers
have exceeded their operational life, but we are lacking evidence of that. So we'd like something for you to justify that that is actually the case.
They were built between 68 and 75.
I know when they were built. I'm asking for an engineer's report.
They had a lifespan of 50 years. These are not opinions, they're facts.
To be fair, Chair, that my time is up, unfortunately.
It's interesting that throughout this whole inquiry, after many public hearings, none of us are none the wiser as to the benefits of the cost versus benefits of demolishing or
Sorry, can
renovating.
you let her speak, please? Yeah, I'm going to say again.
And that is a concern to me. The other thing that is a major concern is every time there is a question put to you, it seems that there is this astronomical deflection where you go on a lecture about misinformation and disinformation. Well, we have been trying to get the truth and the information, and it is your government that has withheld it. In fact, I think it's 146 documents that have been withheld. So I really don't think you can lecture anyone in this committee or within the Parliament on not having the correct information if you are not going to give it. So this is an important inquiry. It's public land, public towers, public money, and it's in the public interest. And the last question I'm going to have is if you want to clear up those complaints that you've had, Minister, are you going to release the remaining documents?
Please don't mistake my determination and my commitment to some of the most vulnerable people in Victoria as a lecturer. Dr. Heath, that does a disservice to the work that is happening day and night to provide people with what they need. I'm very
interrupt there. You are not the hero of the Victorian people. We're trying to get answers here. We are trying to get the best outcome, like you are, for these residents. So just, can you come back and answer my question, please?
Again, Dr. Heath, I'm answering the question as you put it to me. We will continue to work with people on their terms, in their way. And this is why 88% of people have either relocated or are in the process of relocating. There are 26 people yet to agree, and we will continue to work with them carefully, respectfully, sensitively. We will meet people where they are in order to assist them with the homes that they deserve. And I am under no illusions. I'll finish where I started about the challenges and about the distress associated with major change. That applies to everybody in every chapter of their lives. It's incumbent upon us to recognise that, to respect it and to incorporate it into the systems of engagement that we have. And that's at the heart of the decision to redevelop these towers, as much at the heart of it as the engagement that people are doing every single day with people one-on-one about their lives and where their lives will be long after this committee has finished its deliberations.
So the answer to the question is no?
I've answered the question, Dr. Heath.
No.
That brings a conclusion.
If you go down in the woods today, you're sure of a big surprise. If you go down in the woods today, you better go in disguise. For every bear that ever there was will gather there for certain, because today's the day the teddy bears have their picnic. Every teddy bear who's been good is sure of a treat today. There's lots of marvelous things to eat and wonderful games to play. Beneath the trees where nobody sees, they'll hide and seek as long as they please. That's the way the teddy bears have their picnic. Picnic time for teddy bears. The little teddy bears are having a lovely time today. Watch them, catch them unawares, and see them picnic on their holiday. See them gaily gad about, they love to play and shout, they never have any cares. At 6 o'clock their mummies and daddies will take them home to bed, 'cause they're tired little teddy bears.